Welcome. I'm Cheryl Mitchell, the president of Tree 11, which is a retreat and learning center here in the county. And we have had the pleasure of partnering with Building Bright Futures for the past few years, bringing information about what's going on in our community for families with really young children. We, as many people in this community, feel that the way we support families with young children is really the most important thing that we can be doing in our community. And I have to say, it's my thrill today to be welcoming the new director of Mary Johnson Children's Center, where my son grew up, whose name is Dave Mandel. Dave, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Cheryl.
For coming. We're really thrilled that you're here, and I think I mentioned that anytime there's a change in sort of long-term stable leadership in a really, really important program in the community, it's made people wonder what's going to happen next, and everything that I've heard is that you've got it. You've moved in, and you're really bringing the dream of Mary Johnson even to the next step. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit. Why don't we start with you? How did you end up here as the new CEO of Mary Johnson?
Thanks so much. Thanks. Well, those kind words are really touch me, really special to me. And Vermont has been part of our family's life and my life professionally at a core period of time. It was around 20 years ago now, but I was a Vermont elementary school principal starting in Clarendon, Vermont, in Rutland County, not so very far from here, really,
right.
And not so different in a lot of ways. From the Middlebury community and surrounding towns. But what's special to me is that was my first school principalship after having been an early childhood special educator in an urban setting, the Bronx, New York, and an assistant principal in a suburban setting, Westchester County. And this was my chance to come into a welcoming community. As somebody who knew Vermont as a Long Islander growing up, I knew of Vermont as a place to go and ski. But when I settled there, and my wife and I had two very young girls at the time, and had a third while we lived there, we became the social and professional aspects intertwined in a delightful way. We were part of the school community, part of the life of the community, and I got to take my professional leadership skills to the next level. What excites me about what I'm doing now at Mary Johnson is we're focused, yes, we're connected to programs that support elementary age children. The after-school programs are phenomenal, and Ann Gleason directs those beautifully.
She's great, yeah.
Yes, throughout the county. So she's a treasure, and her assistant Peter, and those team members who run those sites. But our core focus in lots of ways at the centers is on young children and services that support families and partner with families in creating environments where young children can thrive. Starting now at infancy
you're using
through
the word centers.
Right.
So Mary Johnson used to be one center. Can you talk a little bit about the expansion and having infants now? I know when I was there, your children had to be toilet trained before they were allowed to enroll.
Right.
So things have changed some.
That's true. It's a small-ish part of what we do now, but at Mary Johnson itself, in the small building across the driveway, the Barrera House, we have a classroom now serving 6 young children around 18 months old is when they start with us. And that's a really nice opportunity to have some staff members work with us while their young children are with us, and then gradually, and now it serves some families from outside our staff as well. But primarily we have 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5-year-olds, and young 5-year-olds in the Middlebury program, and we have preschool age children in East Middlebury at what we call the co-op.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a program with a lot of its own special history and many family
Right.
memories. And we have space in a school building in Orwell, a classroom space in a school building in Orwell that we use also for a preschool program. So among these, we're serving over 100 children, 110 children.
And that's not even counting the after-school programs?
Correct. The after-school program is now, Anne's written a report showing at least 250 are served in some way by those activities throughout the county. So that's exciting as well.
Yeah. So your background, as I understand it, you were a Montessori teacher at one time, or you were trained in Montessori, and I'm
I
wondering
have
if-
received Montessori training as a director for half a dozen years of a Montessori early childhood program down in New York. I really was imbued with that philosophy, which touched a lot of the same sense of what works for young children that I had, but perhaps hadn't precisely articulated when I was in teacher training programs previous to that. But Montessori sparked some aha moments for me.
Mhm.
Reading Maria Montessori's history and teachings and those who carried them forward, I thought, this is an exciting philosophy and it's pragmatic. And the same can be said of Reggio Emilia, which is the basis for what Mary Johnson does. These are parallel philosophies and practices in that they respect children's right to identify what they want to do, even from a very young age. Not just because it's nice to let children have some freedom, but because it's effective.
Right.
So we create,
Right.
so teachers in the Montessori program that I came from, and certainly at Mary Johnson programs, are creating environments that are stimulating, but that offer structure and support.
So I'm curious, because Mary Johnson has the reputation of nurturing fabulous new teachers who then get stolen by other programs, whether there's an intentional focus on you all being able to change the community for all kids by helping to nurture along your younger staff members. How is that working?
I think, yeah, that might feel always like a challenge. You hope that people who are attending training programs and spending countless hours wrestling with reporting requirements to the point that they master them, we all think, until
Right.
there's some technical glitch that interferes. But when you have staff members, colleagues working along those ways, you certainly hope, okay, we want you to stay with us, and we want to make it comfortable for you to do so. But speaking with other directors, we all have the same kind of anxiety about that. And it was true before I came at Mary Johnson. It will continue to be true that we want to retain wonderful, effective teachers who are newer to the profession, who have been there 20 years or more, and everybody in between, and create and help to create and support career ladders for those who are newer and want to continue their education. But I don't have a simple answer for why that's a challenge. Partly it's the fact that there's fairly low unemployment in the state,
Right.
and a fairly limited pool of people to draw from if we lose people to moves out of state or spouse's work changes and other reasons like that. I don't think I'm terribly concerned that we'll lose people because other programs are nicer to work at. I think
I
Mary
don't think
Johnson.
it's nicer.
No.
I think people
However,
sort of
pay
recognize
and benefits are a challenge
Right.
sometimes for programs,
Yeah.
for all of our programs. Keeping up with public schools can be a challenge that we're
Could you
keeping
talk
an eye
about
on.
that? Because
Yeah.
you've been
Mhm.
a school principal, you understand
Right.
the public system as well as the private system. Do you see some resolution of the wages and benefits issue in the two different settings in the near future?
I think that it's going to be a long-term problem to work on, but certainly when there are state requirements and supports and federal requirements and supports about what's effective and helpful for families and for their young preschool age, infant truly to 5-year-old children before they reach grade school, why then should the same supports for faculty, for support staff, not be parallel,
Yeah.
or at least competitive to what we're doing at elementary, middle, and high school levels? That's the question. The answer is not a perfectly simple one, except in situations where there's financing that moves from public school districts to programs like ours. It does prompt the question, well then, if we are partnering with funds and with services to make this work for children before they reach their zoned elementary schools,
Right.
then why aren't we providing the same level of compensation, benefits packages, and so forth to the creative and wonderful teachers we depend on to make it all work?
Yeah. It seems.
So I guess I'm arriving at questions rather than solutions,
Yeah.
but at least we're talking about it, and there are some systems to share ideas and to create advocacy to our, in Vermont, accessible state reps. Which
I'm also
is
wondering if you're.
not the feeling in every state.
You had mentioned shared services earlier, so
Right.
that all not all yet, but many of the center-based programs working together around some of these issues. Whether you see any possibility that that's going to help change things.
Yeah, in a couple of ways. I mean, sometimes we can create administrative efficiencies, which will at least allow us to spend our scarce dollars wisely. And that might mean we are partnering about everything from IT to building maintenance. But apart from those nitty-gritty issues, as important as they are, we can partner on staff development and also some shared advocacy to our state legislators, but also those administrative committees at the state level who make things happen or help us to help make things happen. Here's our unified voice on what we see in the future. And since 0 to 6 neurologically, socially, developmentally is such a critical time, it deserves the support and attention. And there are some hopeful signs that we're getting it. And Vermont is a model in northern New England and a model nationally as well in getting these conversations going, but also getting action happening.
Is that so? What's it like for you being back in Vermont after being in the big city? You mentioned being in the Bronx, being in Brooklyn,
Right,
being
right.
in Long Island.
Exactly.
Being in, oh, you didn't mention only to me. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your time in Nigeria too.
Yes, one of my shorter stints and very meaningful one as professionally and personally was a 2-year stint I did helping to bring an American curriculum to a newly founded school for early years through 12th grade in southeastern Nigeria, a rainforest climate area of Nigeria called Calabar. And that's that's quite a few years ago now, when my now college-age daughters were in elementary and just starting middle school. And they came with me for part of the time, and it was American curriculum, but there were some British traditions involved, and multicultural, but multicultural within the Nigerian community more than uh, more than anything else, but also multicultural because expats from all over the world joined forces there, and our children came into program. But in any case, it was delightful. It's delightful to think, and we still talk frequently as a family about they're wearing the school uniforms and going to classes, and a fascinating experience culturally.
Yeah.
But again, we talked a little earlier about, even though I've consistently been interested in children, early childhood education, what works for kids and families, and gone to very different geographical sites to do it. I'd been in New York State most of my life and thought, let's try something really different. But parents want very similar things for their children, regardless of whether they're trying to raise their children in a small town, in a big city, whether they have access to a lot of services or just a few. We all want great things for our kids, and we want to nurture. We want to nurture our kids ourselves to the extent we have time, and we feel torn as parents doing the things we have to do to support our families, and we feel a sense of relief and pride and involvement when we can connect with a program that we trust, and providers we can trust, providers of childcare services, but childcare services are early education.
Right. So
And parenting is also early education.
could you talk a little bit more about,
Formative.
you're certainly providing wonderful high quality child care for the kids, just a nurturing environment. Do you do more explicit outreach to the children's families? Are you like a social work center for families, or what would you say is your relationship with the children's parents?
I'd say yes to all of that. We partner with Head Start, so there's outreach to families who need to figure out ways to connect the dots with programs and supports that the family needs, but who also are active in the program in a network, supporting other parents. So that's exciting to see. Through the Strengthening Families program, we're also doing outreach to provide really I call it a network of parents again, the way Head Start can be, but it's connections to providers who work directly with children, but also can explain to parents and engage with parents in what's the meaning of this kind of work with children. How do we deal with children as active learners, and they all are and want to be active learners and have a choice and voice in what they're doing from the earliest age through their adult careers. We want to have a choice and voice, and that works best for us. So we are sometimes advising parents of ways to engage children. We're also trying to find a common language between what happens in our homes and in our busy, hectic lives with a parent or two parents or other family members, all busy working and all trying to make this happen. And children learning to advocate for themselves, even with a very few words at first, even non-verbally at first, to the time they're really saying, this is what works for me, this is what I want, this is what upsets me, this is why I'm frustrated. So I think we're helping to as partners with Head Start through Strengthening Families, we're providing a context for families to bridge whatever gap might have been there, or perceived gap between what schools do and what homes do.
Mm-hmm.
Really, parents should be our partners, and parents from all kinds of families, at all kinds of income levels and all kinds of housing situations, should feel comfortable being our partners, and that we're there to support and work with them.
I'm thinking about this issue of partnership because I think Mary Johnson is one of the 2 surviving community developed child care programs in the state of Vermont, and really was an amazing community effort to say this is open for all children across all income levels,
Right.
across all different employment settings. And I know that you said maybe you have your 50th anniversary coming up. Do you want to talk some about how you would hope that the community would continue celebrating and supporting your work?
That's great. Those are both extremely good points. Yes, we're open to all, and I felt this way in Clarendon too, that we should be a community center. And in that little school, we were the town center. It happened to be the place where moms and dads came to vote, but it was also a preschool center and elementary school. And at Mary Johnson and at the Co-op and in Norwell, we want the feeling that we can help keep doors open for you. And childcare can be difficult to find.
Right.
And when we are short of seats, and we do end up with a waiting list, and we continue to have a waiting list and help to people work their way into the program if they've been on the list. We also have a referral specialist on site, and I think I mentioned an eligibility or subsidy specialist. So you've got to, if you can't find a spot in one of our sites, there are other high quality programs we can help you find. But you've also got to be able to afford them, and we help families with that aspect too. That specialist does in our office at Mary Johnson. That means then that we're supporting a diverse community in kinds of families, in what families can afford, and even where families live throughout the county. We're supporting a large number of people. Now, the 50th anniversary coming up is that's an exciting opportunity, I think, for all of us to celebrate. It might be people who themselves, and we have a board member who was in this situation, who themselves were children in program, who themselves recently had children in program or have children in program now, preschoolers, infants, school-age children who are doing the all of those exciting after-school activities. And it might be friends of the school who know us through those support programs that I mentioned, and those family events that I touched on. But this could be a family and community event that's generations deep as well as county or beyond Addison County wide. Because in 50 years, it's 25 two-year-old generations, right? Thinking of it that way. But it's a couple of grown-up generations, and I'd love to see, I really want to make an appeal to people to reach out to us at the Mary Johnson office and to me personally with their thoughts and hopes for what could be a meaningful way of recognizing 50 years of history in Mary Johnson. I think the really last huge event of this kind was for the 35th. Am I right about that?
I think that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and Dave's contact information will come up later, so people will know how to get in touch with you.
Right.
And it sounds like you would welcome a phone call as well as
Absolutely.
somebody sending you an email or something.
Absolutely. And I get excited about all of this and ramble on about it, but it's a wonderful, Addison County is a beautiful place to explore, and all of the towns have a terrific heart. And Mary Johnson has been connected in so many ways to the life of the county and the lives of people in our towns.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a welcoming feeling too.
Yeah.
So it was like a homecoming.
For you when you
For me,
came here?
coming, yes, when I first visited. And it's a change of life for us as a family now, for my wife and me, as our youngest just started college. And she has special memories of Vermont. A little vaguer because she was a little one back then, but she was born in Vermont, at home in Clarendon Springs.
I'm a little curious because you have this wonderful wealth of different kinds of ways of connecting with the early childhood community and with the educational community. Whether your experience in Orwell, you said you were in one of the classrooms there.
Yes.
Would you be able to consider expanding into some of the other smaller schools that have declining enrollment and communities that are in desperate need of childcare? Is that in your plans for the future?
It's a fascinating prospect. We have done some research and development work about feasibility. Vergennes is one town where there have been some discussions by past directors, by the past director, board team, and members of that community. And that's something that deserves really serious attention. What we've got is some conflicting kind of trend lines, I think. We've got a population statewide that's not growing.
Right.
And people at my stage of life, that seems to be the wave of population right now. And yet we still need appropriate and exciting and solidly supported places for young children to go.
Right.
It's a bit of a chicken and egg problem. If there are declining enrollments, and that's why classrooms are available at sites in some towns, that then is connected to a decline in families with children. Generally, we would imagine.
Yeah.
But trend lines can plateau and then start going the other way, especially if we create conditions that are attractive to families who already have children or who might be having children. So yes, we're looking at that closely about what's feasible, what the numbers would be we'd really serve, and how we would make this work.
Right. Well, Dave, unfortunately, we only have like 2 minutes left, and I'm wondering if there's something that you wanted to share with the Addison County community that I haven't asked. I'm sure there's lots, but do you have 1 or 2 closing words for us about your hopes for the next 5 years, say?
Thanks. Well, my hope for the coming year is to do as much as we can to support families and staff members and continue to build on. I say that we stand on the shoulders of giants, people who came before me, who built these programs and who continue to work in them. I'm endlessly grateful. So I want to continue to be supportive, and that means good facility and fiscal management and keeping our ears and eyes open for other avenues of support. And in the near term, I'd love to see loads of participation in that 50th anniversary celebration.
Okay.
That'll be a morale boost and community building and a chance to reconnect and have a reunion. And it also might set the tone for what we'll do next. Beyond that, for years to come, I think we need to get as sharp as we can. And again, I'd rest partly on work and research that's already been done, but sharpen our pencils and do more of that. But where do we go from here? What does it mean that population is not quite growing, and yet we know Vermont is a more attractive place to live in some ways than it ever was.
Yeah.
How could we even connect with agencies and developers who are in other fields, such as developers of properties and businesses, so that more young families would have places to live and work in the state? And we know how great it is to be here, but they need
Yeah.
places to be.
So we're so grateful that you're in this community now and working with everybody on all of these issues. For those of you that are watching today, if you'd like to get in touch with Dave, you can call him, you can email him, you could probably drop by. You'll see his contact information in a minute. And we also just want to say, if you're watching and you have important information that you would like to get out to the public about a nonprofit that you're working with or a project that you're working on, I would really encourage you to call the station here. They're amazingly wonderful at helping people get information out to the public. So thank you, Dave, for being here.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you all for watching us today.